Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. Staying home alone isn't usually a big deal for me. I'm 15 years old and my parents let me hang out by myself all the time. But this weekend was different. With my parents out of town, I had the whole place to myself for several days. It started out pretty sweet, eating junk food, watching countless movies, staying up late. Your typical Home Alone stuff. But then things took a creepy turn. The first night I was kicking back playing video games in the living room. Out of nowhere, I heard a knocking at the front door. It wasn't just a normal knock though. It was a peculiar rhythm. Bang, and then a quiet knock, and then another bang. I paused my game, confused. Were my parents back already? I headed to the front door and peered out the side window. Empty. That's weird. I figured maybe some kids were playing ding-dong ditch in the neighborhood. Annoying, but nothing to worry about. A couple hours later, I had settled on the couch to watch a movie. As I was scrolling through the channels, there it was again, the unusual knock. My head whipped around. What the heck? Now I was a little freaked out. I cautiously made my way to the front door and looked outside again. Still no one. The hairs on my arm prickled. Who kept knocking like that and disappearing? Against my better judgment, I swung open the front door to check. Silence. Even the crickets had stopped chirping. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm night air. I quickly slammed the door and locked it. After double-checking all the windows and doors were secure, I shook off my paranoia and returned to my movie. I left the hall light on, just in case. The knocking had stopped when I couldn't relax waiting for the eerie sound to start up again. I barely followed the plot of the movie as I sat tense, listening for anything out of the ordinary. A few hours later, I decided to try going to bed. The house was quiet and I was exhausted from feeling on edge. I brushed my teeth in the bathroom down the hall, staring at my tired expression in the mirror. As I was spitting out my toothpaste, it echoed through the silence. I dropped my toothbrush, heart pounding against my ribs. Gripped with adrenaline, I burst out of the bathroom and sprinted to the front door, skidding across the hardwood floors in my socks. I tore open the door, ready to confront whoever was messing with me. But just like before, the porch was empty, the driveway still. My shoulders slumped as I stood there panting, more confused than ever. After that scary episode, there was no way I could sleep. I planted myself on the living room couch with all the lights on. Periodically, I would get up and check out the windows or open the front door, hoping to catch whoever was lurking outside. But each time, nothing. I never actually saw a single person. Yet every couple hours, like clockwork, the bizarre knocking would start up somewhere in the house. And every time I'd race urgently toward the sound, only to find no one there. By the time sunlight started creeping through the windows, I was a complete mess. Jittery from adrenaline, weary from no sleep. I needed to figure out what was going on for my own peace of mind. I started rationalizing the situation. Maybe it was the wind knocking a tree branch against the house in that eerie rhythm. Could it be old pipes settling and clicking in the walls, or some strange animal scratching to get inside? None of those explanations felt totally right, though. I thought about calling my best friend or even the police to come over, but what would I say? I'm hearing knocking noises in my empty house and I'm scared. I felt silly. They would think I was crazy or hearing things. Plus, the last thing I wanted was to look like a frightful child who couldn't handle being home alone. No, I had to handle this myself. In the light of day, I decided to do a thorough sweep of the house. I crept slowly through every room, inspecting windows, doors, vents, anything something could be coming from. But I came up empty-handed. Everything was sealed up tight, and nothing seemed disturbed. The only odd thing was that the rhythmic knocking always sounded like it was coming from whatever room I happened to be in at the time, which didn't add up with my thorough inspection. I sat in my bed, gazing out the window and racking my brain. What was the source of the knocking and why couldn't I find it? The next couple of days continued the same way. I camped out close to the front door ready to catch the culprit. I searched every inch of the house whenever the knocking would start up. But still no explanation. By the time my parents finally returned, I was exhausted both mentally and physically. Never had I felt so relieved to hear their keys jangling in the front door. As we caught about their trip, I debated telling them what had happened. I wondered if now that the house wasn't empty, the eerie knocking would stop. But I ultimately decided not to worry them since the noises only seemed to happen when I was alone. Sure enough, with my parents back, the knocking ceased completely and never started up again. To this day, I still have no idea what caused the bizarre knocking I kept hearing while I was home alone. It remains an unsettling mystery in the back of my mind. I used to love staying by myself, feeling mature and independent. But now when my parents ask if I'm okay home alone, I suddenly feel like creepy unease wash over me again. The sounds may have stopped, but I just can't shake the lingering thought that maybe, just maybe, I really wasn't alone all along. It started off as a pretty normal Saturday. I was sitting on the couch catching up on some reading and enjoying a rare day to myself. My husband was off playing golf with friends and wouldn't be back until dinner time. The sun was streaming in through the windows as I sipped my tea and flipped through the pages of my novel. Peace and quiet, just what I needed. I had just reached an exciting plot twist when my cell phone started buzzing from the coffee table, flashing an unknown number. I frowned, not recognizing the caller ID. Telemarketers always seem to have the worst timing, but I swiped to accept the call anyway, figuring I just asked to be put on their do not call list. Hello, I answered cautiously. Silence on the other end, but just as I was about to pull the phone away from my ear, an eerie sound drifted through the speaker. A sort of static hissing, rhythmically breaking up as if someone was breathing heavily into the microphone. The hairs on my arm prickled. Who is this? I demanded, sitting up straight. More crackling silence followed by faint muffled cries in the background, almost like a baby or a small child. Is someone there? Is everything okay? I asked more gently. The static snapped loudly in my ear, causing me to jump. Then the call abruptly ended, my screen flashing back to the home screen. I stared at it bewildered. What the hell was that about? I logged the mysterious number in my contacts as strange call and tried to shrug it off as just a weird pocket dial. But I couldn't focus on my book anymore, instead glancing at my silent phone every few minutes. I had just settled back into the story when the eerie cries and static suddenly started up again from my phone, the same unknown number flashing urgently. I slid to answer, heart racing. Hello, who is this? What do you want? The crackling static hissed in response, occasionally interrupted by muffled whimpers. It almost sounded like a small child trapped somewhere, crying out for help. I strained trying to make out any words, but I could only distinguish the odd, garbled weeping under a layer of white noise interference. Please just tell me what's going on, are you okay? I urgently pleaded into the phone, but the call quickly clicked off again, leaving me sitting in confused silence. I ran through potential explanations in my head. Was this some kind of disturbing prank call? A butt dial from a daycare or something? Some telemarketer's idea of a joke? None of those options felt quite right. Whoever was on the other end of the line sounded like they needed help. But how was I supposed to assist without any information? I sat there numbly debating if I should try tracing the number or calling the police. But with such vague details, I doubted they could do much. Before I could decide my next move, the cry started up again, sending a chill down my spine. This time I didn't even attempt to communicate. I just sat gripping the phone tightly, listening to the garbled weeping and static hiss. After a minute or two, the call again ended abruptly. This repeated every 10 to 15 minutes for the next couple hours. The phone would ring with a strange call ID. I'd cautiously answer and find only disturbing static and faint cries. It was like being trapped in a terrifying cycle with no way to break free or help whoever was trying to reach out to me. I had watched the clock anxiously after each call, counting down the minutes until the next round of unsettling noises would arrive. Part of me wondered if I should just silence my ringer to make the calls stop altogether, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Despite the fear churning in my gut, ignoring the calls felt wrong, like I'd be turning my back on someone who desperately needed me. So I remained trapped in the bizarre nightmarish loop, my imagination running wild about what dark scenario could be unfolding on the other end of the line. Finally, my husband's car pulled into the driveway after what felt like an eternity. I flew outside to meet him, so worked up I was nearly in tears. His cheerful smile dropped when he saw the panic on my face. Back inside, I frantically relayed the strange calls to him, tripping over my words. He immediately wanted to phone the police, but I stopped him. Without any actual proof of a crime or danger, I doubted they could help. We decided to start by attempting to call back the mysterious number. but after several rings, we got only a generic voicemail message. My husband suggested switching my cell number or blocking the calls altogether, but I still couldn't stomach the thought of abandoning whoever was so desperately trying to reach me, even if their motives remained unclear. The rest of the evening was spent tense and on edge, just waiting for the next round of unsettling calls. My husband refused to leave my side, which provided some comfort, but as midnight approached, the calls just stopped. Suddenly, the eerie soundtrack that had haunted my day went silent, almost like it had never existed in the first place. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to normal. No more strange calls came in. The police had no leads when I provided the number, and an online search yielded no information. My husband gently suggested I should stop dwelling on it, that it was likely just kids playing a prank, but I don't know how I'll ever stop wondering about the muffled cries I heard on the other end of those calls. Even now, random phone rings make my pulse quicken. Some nights I still lie awake replaying the static and garbled weeping in my mind. I wish I had answers. I wish I could shake the nagging feeling that I failed someone who needed me. But all I'm left with is the unsettled feeling that I'm still missing some key piece to make sense of that bizarre and terrifying day. I never used to mind being home alone. In fact, I kind of enjoyed having the place to myself to do whatever I wanted. But over the past couple weeks, something strange has started happening that has me feeling really uneasy. It started about 2 weeks ago. I was washing dishes in the kitchen when some movement outside caught my eye. I glanced up to see a man peering in the window at me. He had greasy hair, a scruffy beard, and was pressing his face right up to the glass. I jumped back, startled and a little freaked out. But as I tried to get a better look, he was suddenly just gone. Vanished into thin air. I wrote it off as some door-to-door salesman who got lost and decided to snoop around the wrong house. But then a few days later, I looked up from the stove while cooking dinner, and there he was again. The same shabby-looking guy ogling me through the kitchen window with an unsettling gaze. By the time I rushed to the back door, he had disappeared again. After that second sighting, I started getting really paranoid whenever I was home alone. I draw all the blinds and constantly glance outside, expecting to see creepy beard guy lurking around. My friends laughed it off when I told them about it, saying it was probably just some nosy neighbor wandering home from the bar, but my gut told me something weirder was going on. Over the next week, Mr. Creepy Beard continued to sporadically show up, always peering with intense interest through my kitchen window. A few times I was able to get close enough to make out more details about him. He looked younger than I first thought, maybe mid-20s, and had a tattoo of an owl on his neck. His clothes were always ratty, and his eyes had a strange hollowness. Each time I tried to rush out and catch him, but it was like he vanished into thin air the second I looked away. By now, I was getting really tired of the unwanted visitor. All my attempts to lie in wait and catch him had failed. Since he always appeared at the kitchen window, I started spending most evenings in the living room. But oddly enough, a couple times I looked up from the couch to see him skulking outside the living room window now instead. It was like he could sense where I was in the house and wanted to maximize creeping me out. I shared more details with my friends, but they just didn't seem that concerned, chalking it up to some confused high dude wandering around. But this guy didn't seem confused or harmless to me at all. His gaze was too intense, too focused. Almost like he was casing the place or knew me from somewhere. I couldn't shake the sinister feeling his leering eyes and sudden appearances gave me. After probably the 10th sighting of Mr. Creepy Beard over a few weeks, I decided I'd had enough. The next time he showed up, I was going to confront him once and for all. I wasn't sure what I hoped to achieve exactly, but I was done being a prisoner in my own home. Sure enough, that very evening I heard a faint rustling outside the kitchen window as I washed dishes. I instantly froze, listening closely, the only sound the pounding of my heart. Ever so slowly, I turned my head. There he was, ghostly pale face presses against the glass, owlish eyes staring unblinkingly. Adrenaline surged through my veins. I threw down the dish sponge and stormed toward the back door. This was going to end tonight. I slid on my shoes and grabbed an umbrella for protection. Gripping it tightly like a weapon, I took a deep breath and stepped outside into the dusky evening. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the shadows. I could just make out a figure at the edge of the yard, lingering behind some bushes. As I crept closer, twigs snapping under my feet, the shape darted further back into the gloom of the trees. I wanted to shout at him to stop and show himself, but held back, not wanting to provoke him. Instead, I inched cautiously closer, umbrella poised to strike. But as I drew nearer, they fled and vanished into the blackness of the woods. How does he disappear so quickly? I scanned the tree line, heart thudding wildly. I thought about threatening to call the cops if he returned, but didn't want to escalate things if he was still potentially listening. After a few more moments of peering in vain into the shadows, I reluctantly turned and went back inside, making sure to lock the door. That was a week ago, and I haven't caught even a glimpse of Mr. Creepy Beard since that night in the yard. Maybe seeing me confront him did the trick. Or maybe he finds less alert victims now that I'm onto him. I still make sure my curtains are tightly drawn in case he comes poking around again. But the backyard remains quiet and empty whenever I check. Part of me hopes I really have seen the last of him. But another part wonders if I should have tried harder to catch him that night, or if I should report him to the police with the description I have. He could be lurking around other houses by now. All I know is I'm keeping my umbrella close and paying extra attention to any rustling outside. Because if Mr. Creepy Beard thinks he'll catch me off guard again, he's got another thing coming. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.